The billionaire's dog guarded the witness until justice was served. If you believe courage only belongs to heroes in uniforms, wait until you meet the man who vanished from his empire to protect a stranger, and the dog who refused to leave her side. Now, let us return to the night. Everything began with the witness running for her life. Rain lashed against the windshield of a speeding black SUV as it tore down a forest road in northern Montana. Headlights carved through the dark, catching glimpses of fir trees and the glint of wet gravel. Inside, Sofia Dominguez gripped a flash drive like it was her heartbeat. Her breath came fast, fogging the window. The voice in her earpiece had already gone silent. Then, a gunshot shattered the rear glass. She screamed and slammed the door open, tumbling into the mud. Her knees hit hard. She crawled, the flash drive still clutched in her shaking hand, and ran toward the trees. Branches whipped her face. She slipped once, twice, then caught the sound low, sharp barking cutting through the storm. A German shepherd stood at the edge of the clearing, fur-soaked, eyes alert. The dog barked again, turning its head as if to say this way. Sofia hesitated only a second before following. The forest swallowed them. Behind her, tires screeched, voices shouted. "She went north," a man yelled. Another round cracked through the rain. Bark exploded from a tree beside her head. The dog darted ahead, swift and silent. Sofia stumbled after it until the ground suddenly vanished beneath her boots. She hit the earth, chest heaving, and looked up. A man stood over her, tall, broad-shouldered, rain dripping off a gray tactical jacket. His face was shadowed, his voice calm but firm. "If you want to live," he said, "follow the dog." He turned without waiting for an answer. She followed. They moved through the dark until the trees thinned and a faint orange glow appeared ahead. A cabin sat half hidden behind stacked logs, its windows dark, smoke barely curling from the chimney. The man pushed the door open with the back of his arm, ushered her in, and locked 3 bolts behind them. The only sound was her own breathing and the rhythmic shake of her wet clothes. "Who are you?" she demanded, voice trembling. He pulled off his gloves. His knuckles were scarred, his movements precise, military. "Someone who was sent to find you," he said. "Sit down." The dog Valor, she later learned, circled once, then lay beside her feet. His fur was warm, solid, real. She pressed a hand to his back as if anchoring herself to something that could not lie. "Why are they after me?" she asked. "They think you still have the file," he replied. Her fingers tightened around the flash drive in her pocket. "Then you know what is on it." "One." He looked at her, eyes the color of iron under dim firelight. "Enough to destroy powerful men." For a long moment, the storm outside roared between them. Then he stood, poured water into a tin cup and handed it to her. "You are safe here for now," he said. "Valor will not let anyone close." As thunder rolled, she finally whispered, "What should I call you?" The man paused. "Roman," he said. Roman Carver. The name meant nothing to her yet, but somewhere in the back of her mind, the syllables settled like a weight waiting to fall. Outside, lightning tore across the sky, revealing the sign barely visible through the rain. Carver Estate, private land. And so began the night the witness met the man who had already lost everything, and the loyal dog who would stop at nothing to make sure neither of them ever would again. Before we continue, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us continue the story. By the time dawn broke over the mountains, the storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean and silent. Inside the cabin, the smell of coffee drifted through the air. Sofia sat wrapped in a wool blanket, staring at the steam rising from her cup. Across the room, Roman Carver moved with the stillness of someone who had lived too long in danger. He checked the locks, the window frames, and the radio before speaking. "You did not sleep," he said quietly. "Neither did you," she replied. Roman gave a half-smile. Old habits. A soldier never really stops listening for trouble. She studied him. In the daylight, she saw the sharp line of his jaw, the gray in his stubble, and the scar that ran from his wrist up to his forearm. He carried the weight of command even in silence. "Were you in the military?" she asked. He nodded once. "K9 unit. Valor was my partner." The dog lifted his head at his name, tail thumping against the wooden floor. Roman poured water into a bowl and set it down before turning back to her. "What about you?" he asked. "You said you were a journalist." Sofia hesitated. The word felt heavier now. I was, she said. Until 2 weeks ago, when my team vanished after exposing the bribes inside Carver Industries. I thought if I ran, I could at least protect the evidence. Roman's eyes flickered, unreadable. You are brave, he said softly. I am terrified, she answered. That is what bravery usually feels like. For a long moment, the only sound was the crackle of the fire and the wind outside. Valor stretched, resting his head on her knee. The gesture was so simple, so human, that her throat tightened. Roman opened a metal case on the table. Inside were a pistol, a folded map, and 2 compact radios. He slid one toward her. If we get separated, channel 7. Short bursts only. The men chasing you have scanners. Sofia picked it up carefully, feeling the weight of trust it implied. You have done this before, she said. Too many times, he admitted, but never for someone who had no protection at all. She looked up. Then why help me? Roman leaned back, eyes on the fading firelight. Because the people trying to silence you are the same ones who stole everything from me. My company, my reputation, my father's name. And because truth deserves at least one person willing to guard it. Tall. Outside, a bird called once, sharp and distant. The peace was fragile, temporary. Roman stood and motioned for her to follow him outside. The world was bright, snow crusted over the trees, steam rising from the wet earth. Behind the cabin, a narrow path led down toward a frozen stream. We will need food and medical supplies, he said. There is a service road 3 miles south. If they trace the vehicle you escaped in, this area will not stay quiet for long. Sofia nodded. Then let us go. Before they left, she reached down and tied a piece of red cloth to Valor's collar. So I can find him in the snow, she said. Roman glanced at the bright color against the white fur and smiled faintly. Good idea. Stay close. They started down the trail, their breath fogging in the cold morning air. Each step crunched softly, echoing through the still woods. Halfway down the slope, Sofia stopped. Roman, she said. If we make it through this, I want to tell my story. The full truth. No more hiding. He looked back at her, the winter sun cutting across his face. Then we will make sure you live to tell it. Valor barked once, the sound sharp and strong, as if sealing a promise neither of them could take back. And with that, the billionaire in hiding, the witness on the run, and the loyal dog named Valor disappeared once more into the frozen wilderness. 3 survivors bound not by fear, but by the fragile hope that truth, someday, would be enough to save them all. By the 3rd night in the mountains, the snow had turned to sleet. The roof of the small cabin creaked under its weight, and the air smelled of pine, smoke, and damp wood. Inside, Sofia sat by the fire, rubbing warmth back into her hands while Roman cleaned a cut on her arm. The scrape had happened when she tripped earlier on the trail, chasing after Valor when he ran ahead. Roman worked silently, his movements careful. The flicker of the fire painted his face in shades of gold and shadow. You should have told me you were hurt, he said finally. It is nothing, she replied. I have had worse. Roman looked up, his gray eyes steady. You keep saying that, but you bleed like the rest of us. The silence between them was heavy, not with anger, but with the weight of what neither could admit out loud. He tore a strip of clean gauze and wrapped it around her arm. Sofia watched him, noticing the precision in his hands, the faint tremor when he tied the knot. You are used to taking care of people, she said. Not anymore, he answered. People stopped trusting me a long time ago. Why? Roman hesitated. Because I was one of the names on that file you are carrying. At least, I used to be. Sofia froze. The fire popped, a small ember jumping onto the stone hearth. You were involved? I was the one who signed the last contract before they used the company to funnel money into bribes. I was told it was for research, for clean energy. By the time I found out the truth, my father had already been gone, and the men who replaced him were laundering billions through shell projects. When I confronted them, they turned the investigation on me. The world thinks I disappeared because I was guilty. His voice broke slightly on the last word, but he did not look away. Sofia's heartbeat quickened. So that means, Roman nodded slowly, that file you risked your life, for it clears my name as much as it condemns theirs. She stood, pacing near the fire, trying to make sense of it. The pieces fit, but they hurt to hold. You knew I was carrying it, did you not? That is why you came for me. Yes, he said. At first. And now? Now I am not sure who is saving whom. Valor stirred, sensing the tension. He rose, placing his head gently against Sofia's leg. The warmth of his fur steadied her more than words could. She reached down, scratching behind his ear. "At least one of you does not have secrets," she murmured. Roman exhaled slowly. "He has one too," he said. "That red cloth you tied on him? It belonged to my unit. Every soldier who wore it promised to protect the innocent, no matter the cost." Sofia looked at the scrap of fabric fluttering against Valor's collar and felt something shift inside her. "Then let us keep that promise," she said quietly. Roman nodded. "We will, but it means we cannot stay here." He moved to the table and unfolded a map marked with faded ink lines. "There is an old ranger station 10 miles west with a radio that still works. We can use it to upload the files to the federal database. Once the truth is out, it will not matter how far they chase us." Sofia studied the map, then the man beside it. For the first time, she saw not a stranger, but someone carrying a burden just as heavy as hers. "When do we leave?" she asked. "As soon as the weather clears," he said. "And Sofia," she looked up, "if something happens to me out there, you keep going. You get that evidence to the world." "I will not leave you behind," she said. "You might have to." Their eyes met, the firelight caught between them. Outside, the storm began to fade, and for a moment, the world felt still again. Sofia placed the flash drive on the table between them. "Then let us both make it," she said, "because the truth deserves more than one survivor." Roman's jaw tightened, but a faint smile tugged at his mouth. "Agreed." Valor lay down beside the door, his tail sweeping softly against the floor, as if he too had understood the deal that had just been made, the kind of promise that could either save them or destroy them by morning. The storm finally broke the next morning. The air was sharp and cold, the kind that stung the lungs but carried a strange sense of renewal. Snowmelt dripped from the eaves of the cabin as Roman packed supplies into a worn canvas bag. Sofia tightened the straps on her boots, every motion deliberate. Valor waited near the door, tail still, eyes alert. They left before sunrise, following the path Roman had traced the night before. The forest was hushed, every branch heavy with frost. The crunch of their boots was the only sound. Roman led the way, rifle slung across his back. "We will move west," he said. "If the weather holds, we reach the ranger station by nightfall." Sofia adjusted her scarf. "And if it does not, then we keep walking," he said simply. For hours they traveled in silence. The trail narrowed between steep ridges, where the wind cut through like a blade. Sofia's breath came out in clouds, her legs aching, but she refused to complain. Roman glanced back now and then, reading her exhaustion but saying nothing. At midday, they reached a clearing where a fallen tree blocked the path. Roman motioned for her to stay behind while he scouted ahead. As she waited, Valor trotted to her side, pressing his head against her thigh. She smiled faintly. "You are better company than most people I know." The dog's ears pricked suddenly. His head turned toward the woods, muscles stiffening. "Roman," she whispered. He was already running back. "Down," he ordered, pulling her behind the trunk just as a gunshot cracked through the air. Bark exploded inches from her shoulder. 3 men emerged from the trees, dressed in dark tactical gear. Roman fired once, then again, controlled and precise. One man fell, the others scattered for cover. Sofia crawled behind a rock, clutching the flash drive in her coat pocket. "How did they find us?" she shouted. "Drone tracking," Roman called back. "They must have picked up heat signatures." Valor barked fiercely, then bolted toward the left flank, drawing attention. Roman took the chance to fire again, hitting a second man. The last attacker turned and ran into the woods. Silence returned, broken only by the echo of gunfire fading through the trees. Sofia stayed crouched, heart pounding, until Roman touched her shoulder. "It is over," he said. She looked at him, sweat on his brow, breath visible in the cold, and realized how close they had come to dying. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, you?" "Fine," he said. But when he turned, she saw the blood on his sleeve. "You are bleeding," she said sharply. "It grazed me," he replied, brushing it off. "We keep moving." They walked for another mile before stopping at a ridge overlooking a frozen lake. Roman sat against a boulder, pulling off his glove to press against the wound. Sofia knelt beside him, opening the medical kit. "Hold still," she said. He winced as she cleaned the cut, her hands steady despite the tremor in her breath. "You saved my life," she whispered. Roman looked at her, the lines of his face softening. "No, Valor did." She smiled weakly. "Then I owe you both." When she finished, he caught her wrist gently. "Sofia," he said, voice low, "if they are this close, it means the ranger station might be compromised. We will need another plan. Such as, there is an old maintenance tunnel near the hydro dam a few miles from here. My father built it when this land still belonged to our family. It connects to a service line that leads straight into the valley. So that is where we go, she said. Roman nodded. If we make it there, we can reach a government outpost by radio. But we must move before dark. She helped him to his feet, their eyes meeting for a heartbeat longer than either expected. The air between them carried both fear and something unspoken, a fragile trust born from survival. As they began walking again, Valor trotted ahead, the red cloth on his collar bright against the snow. Sofia watched it sway in the wind, a small spark of color in a world made of gray. For the first time since the night she ran from the SUV, she allowed herself to believe they might actually make it. But deep inside, a quiet dread lingered. If the men hunting them had already reached this far, it meant someone knew exactly where they were headed next, and that someone was not planning to let them reach the truth alive. The wind grew sharper as daylight faded. Roman, Sofia, and Valor pressed on through the narrowing trail that led toward the old hydro dam. The forest had changed, no longer calm and quiet, but filled with the uneasy hum of distant machinery. Somewhere below the valley, water thundered beneath layers of ice. Roman's breath came slow and steady, but the blood seeping through his sleeve had darkened. Sofia noticed, though she said nothing. Every few minutes she glanced behind them, expecting to see shadows moving through the trees. When the path widened, they stopped to rest beside a rusted sign that read, "Carver Utilities, Restricted Access." Roman brushed snow from the metal and smiled bitterly. "My father built this place when he believed Carver Industries could power the future," he said. "He never imagined it would become a hiding place." Sofia looked at him. "Sometimes the things we build end up saving us, even if they were meant for something else." He met her eyes. "You really believe that?" "I have to," she said quietly. "Otherwise, none of this means anything." Valor barked once, ears pointed toward the ridge. Roman lifted his binoculars and scanned the horizon. 2 black vehicles were crawling down the mountain road like slow predators. "They found the cabin," he said. "They are following our tracks." Sofia's pulse quickened. "How long before they reach us?" "An hour, maybe less." Roman knelt beside Valor, checking the radio attached to his collar. "We go through the tunnel. It is narrow, but it leads directly under the dam to the service room. Once there, we can send the files through the emergency uplink. After that, no one can bury the truth again." He led the way down a steep slope where the snow thinned to wet gravel. The entrance to the tunnel was hidden behind an old metal gate, half buried by vines. Roman forced it open with a groan of rusted hinges. Cold air rushed out, thick with the scent of oil and iron. They stepped inside. The beam of Roman's flashlight swept over the walls decades of decay, graffiti, and dripping water. The echo of their footsteps was deafening. Sofia tightened her coat. "Are you sure this will hold?" Roman gave a short nod. "It was built to survive floods. It will hold long enough for us." Halfway through the tunnel, the radio on Roman's belt crackled. A voice hissed through the static. "We know where you are, Carver. Turn yourself in, and we might let her live." Roman froze. The sound was unmistakable, the voice of Reeves, the man who had once been his second in command. Sofia's face went pale. Roman clicked the radio off. "Keep moving," he said. They quickened their pace, but footsteps echoed behind them now, faint but closing in. Valor growled, ears pressed flat. When they reached the maintenance chamber, Roman pushed Sofia forward. "Plug the drive into that terminal," he ordered. "The system is old, but it still connects to the federal database through the emergency grid." Sofia's fingers trembled as she inserted the flash drive. The screen flickered to life, green letters racing across black glass. Transferring files. The tunnel roared with approaching voices. Gunfire ricocheted off the concrete. Valor lunged toward the sound, barking furiously. Roman took cover behind a steel beam and fired back, the muzzle flash lighting his face in bursts of orange. "Sofia, how much longer?" he shouted. 80%? She cried. Bullets sparked against the wall. One struck a pipe above them, spraying cold water into the air. Roman reloaded, teeth gritted. 95. Valor darted toward a shadow, tackling the first man through the doorway. A shot rang out. The dog yelped but held firm, teeth locked on the attacker's arm. Sofia screamed, "Roman!" He turned, firing twice. The man fell. Then the terminal beeped. Transfer complete. Roman grabbed Sofia's hand. "It is done. Move." They ran through the far end of the tunnel as more voices filled the chamber. Valor limped beside them but refused to slow down. Roman hit a switch on the wall, and a heavy gate slammed shut behind them, sealing the passage. Outside, the sky was streaked with red and gold, the last light of day fading behind the mountains. Sofia looked back toward the sealed tunnel, chest heaving. Roman valor is hurt. Roman knelt, checking the wound along the dog's shoulder. Blood darkened the red cloth around his collar. "He will live," he said softly. "He did what he was trained to do." Sofia touched the collar, her eyes wet. "He saved us." Roman looked toward the horizon, the sound of distant sirens rising from the valley below. "No," he said. "He saved the truth." "So?" And as the sun disappeared, the first signal from the uploaded files reached the authorities' proof that the Carver scandal was real and that justice had just begun its long way home. Night fell over the valley like a curtain of ash. The storm had stopped, but danger had not. Roman, Sofia, and Valor took shelter inside a small concrete shed perched above the river, its windows shattered, its roof bent from years of neglect. The cold pressed through the walls, and the only light came from the dim lantern flickering between them. Roman sat against the wall, his jacket torn and blood drying on his sleeve. Sofia tended to Valor, wrapping a strip of cloth around the dog's wounded shoulder. The animal whimpered softly, then rested his head in her lap. "He will be all right," she whispered, more to herself than to Roman. "He is tougher than both of us combined," Roman said, forcing a faint smile. "But we cannot stay here long. Reeves will not stop until he finds us." Sofia looked up, her face pale but determined. "You said the files were uploaded. They cannot erase the truth anymore." "They can still erase the witnesses," Roman answered. For a moment, silence settled between them, filled only by the river's roar below. The danger felt heavier now, not from the chase, but from what had already been lost. Sofia touched the flash drive still hanging around her neck. "If we die tonight, at least the truth will live." Roman's jaw tightened. "You will not die tonight. I gave my word." She met his gaze, her voice soft but firm. "You cannot promise that." "No," he said. "But I can fight for it." He stood, checked his weapon, and peered through the broken window. Headlights glimmered faintly on the far ridge, 3 vehicles crawling down the dirt road like wolves. "They are close," he said. "We move before they cross the bridge." "Tai." Sofia rose, gathering the lantern and her bag. "Where?" "Downriver. There is a drainage tunnel that connects to the highway system. It was built for maintenance crews decades ago. We can reach the outskirts of the city by dawn." As they stepped outside, the wind hit them like ice. The world was washed in silver light from the moon, the snow glittering beneath their boots. Valor limped beside them, refusing to be carried. They followed the riverbank for nearly a mile until Roman stopped abruptly. In the distance, the tunnel entrance yawned like a dark mouth beneath the dam. But between them and safety, a group of men stood with flashlights sweeping the ice. Reeves was among them. Roman motioned for silence and crouched behind a fallen beam. "They are blocking the path. We need a distraction." Sofia's breath came fast. "I can do it," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, you are the witness. You stay with Valor." Before she could argue, Roman moved. He slipped through the shadows, circling toward the left flank, where an old fuel drum lay near the bank. He picked up a rock and hurled it against the metal. The clang rang out across the valley, like a gunshot. The guards turned. Reeves shouted, "Over there!" and raised his weapon. Roman fired once, hitting the ground near their feet, forcing them to scatter. "Go!" he yelled. Sofia grabbed Valor's collar and ran toward the tunnel. The dog pushed forward despite the pain. Gunfire erupted behind them. A bullet struck the ground near her boots, sending up shards of ice. "Roman!" she screamed. "I am right behind you," he called, voice echoing through the dark. They reached the tunnel, the smell of damp earth filling the air. Roman slammed the metal gate behind them, locking it with a rusted bar. The noise outside faded into the steady pounding of water above their heads. Sofia turned, chest heaving. "You could have been killed." He looked at her, his face shadowed but calm. "That was always part of the deal." She stepped closer, tears glinting in the lantern light. "Do not talk like that." Roman reached out, brushing a streak of dirt from her cheek. "You were never supposed to be part of this war," he said quietly. "But you became the reason I am still fighting it." "Moat?" She did not answer, only pressed her forehead against his chest, feeling his heartbeat against the cold fabric of his jacket. Valor rested beside them, his breathing slow but steady. Outside, sirens began to rise in the distance, the sound of approaching law enforcement. The truth had reached the city. The files Roman and Sofia had risked everything to deliver were already sparking investigations and arrests. Roman exhaled, the tension in his shoulders finally breaking. "It is over," he said. For the first time, it might actually be over. Sofia looked up, her eyes shining through exhaustion. "Then let us live long enough to see it." They stayed there in the tunnel, holding on to one another, while the echo of the sirens grew louder, proof that justice was no longer a dream whispered in the dark, but a light finally breaking through the storm. Dawn crept over the city like a promise finally kept. The snow on the rooftops glowed faintly gold, and for the first time in weeks, the sound of helicopters was not a threat, but protection. Roman, Sofia, and Valor sat on the back of a rescue vehicle parked near the courthouse steps. The night of running was over. Sofia held a thermal blanket around her shoulders, her eyes fixed on the massive gray building ahead. Dozens of journalists crowded near the entrance, microphones raised, waiting. Roman stood beside her, his left arm bandaged, his expression calm but unreadable. "They are ready for us," she said quietly. He nodded. "Once we speak, there is no turning back." "I know," she answered. "But after everything we lost, silence would be the real betrayal." Inside the courthouse, the air smelled of old wood and tension. Federal agents guided them through the corridor toward the main chamber. As they entered, the room fell silent. Cameras clicked, pens scratched, and a low murmur rippled through the crowd. At the front, the prosecutor rose. "Mr. Carver," he said, "do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" Roman's voice was steady. "I do." He turned toward the panel of judges, the light catching the scar on his wrist. "For years, my family's name stood for innovation and integrity. Then greed took its place. I am here not to protect the Carver legacy, but to bury the corruption that wore its face." Sofia watched him, her throat tight. When her turn came, she walked to the witness stand. Cameras focused, flashes bursting like sparks. "I am Sofia Dominguez," she said clearly. "I was an investigative journalist. The evidence I collected was not just about money. It was about power, the kind that destroys lives quietly. I survived because a man and his dog refused to let fear win." "Who?" Her voice broke for a second, then steadied. "The truth is not comfortable. It costs something. But we paid that price so others will not have to." Across the room, Reeves and the other executives sat handcuffed, their faces pale and silent. The evidence on the screen behind them, bank transfers, forged documents, recorded meetings, was undeniable. When the gavel struck, the verdict was clear, guilty on all counts. The room erupted in murmurs, some of disbelief, others of relief. Sofia turned to Roman. "It is done," she whispered. He exhaled slowly, the years of exile leaving his body in one long breath. "Justice," he said, almost to himself. Valor barked once, breaking the solemn air. Reporters turned their cameras toward the dog, who sat proudly beside them, the red cloth around his neck bright against the gray marble floor. Outside, as they stepped into the pale morning light, Sofia looked up at the sky and smiled faintly. "You were right," she said. "Truth deserves someone willing to guard it." Roman reached down, resting his hand on Valor's head. "It was never just someone," he said. "It was all of us." And as the courthouse doors closed behind them, the sound of cameras and applause faded into something purer, the quiet satisfaction of knowing that, for once, justice had not just been spoken, it had been lived. 3 months later, spring returned to the valley, where the story had begun. The snow had melted from the hills, and green crept back into the trees around the old Carver property. The estate that once stood as a symbol of power had been reborn into something quieter, humbler, and more alive. A new sign hung over the wooden gate: the Valor Project, rescue and rehabilitation for K-9 units and veterans. Inside the main training field, Sofia stood in jeans and a gray sweatshirt, tossing a rubber baton for a young German shepherd to chase. Her laughter carried in the breeze. Valor, now healed and strong again, barked proudly from the sideline as if teaching the younger dogs himself. Roman walked out from the renovated barn, sleeves rolled up, clipboard in hand. His steps were lighter now, but there was still that quiet steadiness in the way he moved. "You have been working since sunrise," he said, smiling. Sofia shrugged. "It keeps me sane, and it keeps them happy." "They like you," he said, watching the dogs circle her. "You have a calm they trust." She turned to him, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Maybe it is because I finally trust myself." Roman looked around the field, the volunteers, and the new life that filled the once-forgotten land. "When I first imagined this place," he said, "I wanted it to be a sanctuary for them, For veterans. For anyone who has seen too much darkness. And for you? She asked gently. He hesitated, then smiled faintly. Maybe for me too. They walked together toward the porch where a wooden box rested on the table. Sofia lifted the lid and gasped softly. Inside lay a newly forged silver collar, engraved with the words, "Justice is loyalty." "You rebuilt it," she whispered. Roman nodded. "From the metal of the old gate we broke to escape the tunnel. I thought it should stand for something better now." She ran her fingers across the engraving. "It already does." "Comer." Roman reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a ring attached to a thin chain. It shimmered in the light. "I made one more change," he said. "I forged this ring from the same piece of steel." Sofia froze, her breath catching. "Roman." He took her hand, his voice steady. "I do not have a speech prepared, and I do not have a plan beyond this moment. But every day since that night, I have known one thing. I want to build something honest with you." "Bai Kuei." Tears filled her eyes as he slipped the ring from the chain and held it out. "You helped me rebuild my name, Sofia. Let me rebuild my life with you." Valor barked once, as if urging her to answer. Sofia laughed through her tears. "Yes," she said softly. 1,000 times yes." Roman slid the ring onto her finger. Around them the volunteers clapped, and even the dogs seemed to sense the moment, tails wagging in perfect rhythm. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of grass and pine. Sofia looked at the silver collar again, now resting beside them. "Justice, loyalty, love," she said. "That is a good order, do you not think?" Roman smiled. "The only one that matters." As the sun dipped behind the ridge, its light caught the words on the collar, casting a shimmer across the field, a quiet reminder that from everything broken, something true had finally been built. The morning of their wedding came with a sky so clear it felt like forgiveness. The air smelled of pine and sunlight. Around the open field of the Valor project, white chairs were set in a simple circle, each one tied with a strip of red cloth, the same color that had once marked Valor's collar the night he nearly